Hi everybody. This is my fifth attempt. Yeah, there's where I talk. This is my fourth or fifth attempt to record this video, so I hope I get it right this time. Okay, so today I am going to be recording about perception during trials. You know, we have a choice. In any situation we find ourselves in, we have a choice, right? You could either choose to look at all the negative, or you can choose to look at the bright side, so to speak. And one of the things that I've learned is that finding the positive in everything really helps the trials to go much more smoothly. And it keeps your mind in a forward motion. Like, negative thinking either keeps you stuck where you're at, or you end up regressing and moving backward. Whereas positive thinking is you're focused on your goals, you're focused on the future, and it just helps you move forward in life instead of being stuck where you're at. As long as you're focusing on the negative, you're not going to make progress, and progress is what's important. So I'd like to give Joseph in the Bible as an example. You know, he was sold into slavery by his own brothers. And, I mean, they really wanted to kill him. If it wasn't for one of his brothers just fighting to save his life, he would have died. They wanted to kill him. So when you're going through trials and it's people in your own house, which I know what that's like, I know it can be really hard, but just remember Joseph and how his own brothers tried to have him killed. And instead of having him killed, though, they just sold him into slavery. So imagine how hard that was for him, you know? I mean, when I was first thinking about this story in regards to recording it for perception, one of the things the Lord showed me is that even the perception of his brothers, you know, they saw Joseph as like this young spoiled brat, probably our dad's favorite, and they resented him for it. Instead of loving him, you know, and just leaving it alone, they resented him. And when Joseph shared his dreams with his brothers, he was, I mean, one of the things that I took from it is that he was excited. I never thought about this until I was getting ready to record this video, but it was like the Lord showed me. He was like a kid, you know, or even me sometimes. When God shows me something, I'm excited, and I want to go share it with people. And the people he was closest to were his brothers, you know, his family. And he showed it to and he told his dad and his brothers about his dreams, and instead of being happy for him, they resented him. And the funny thing is that they had the gift of interpreting dreams, which I always thought would be a really great gift to have. And they had that gift without Joseph even explaining to them what the dream meant. They knew what it meant, and they were mad at him for their perception was he's lording it over them. You know, oh, so we're going to bow to you. And instead of being happy for their brother that the Lord is giving him his dreams, or that the Lord is going to use him in a mighty way, they were bitter from their own circumstances, and they were jealous and resentful. And so instead of focusing on the gift that God gave them and being happy even for their own gift of interpreting dreams, they were mad at their brother. And so, okay, that's one aspect of perception with the Joseph story. The other part is Joseph, even though he was sold into slavery, and then he was put in prison because of a lie, he was there for years, and it was like he was forgotten. And I'm sure he felt at times like he was forgotten. But the Lord showed me the reason why he gave those dreams to Joseph. It was his vision for his future. And it was meant to be motivation, because the Lord knew that it was going to take years for Joseph to reach that goal. And it was going to take years for Joseph to fulfill his full purpose. So the Lord gave him a glimpse because he knew his road was going to be a really hard one. God gave him a glimpse, a taste of what he was going to see and what he was going to do for God as a way of motivating him through all the years of slavery and imprisonment that he was going to have to face. Which he, if it was any of us, would say, I didn't deserve this. What did I ever do to deserve this, But he endured it, and never in the Bible did it say he complained. It's possible that he did have some bad days, but I think that Joseph was just a positive kind of person. Some people are just blessed with positivity, and those like me have to learn it. And that's the reason why I'm recording these, is I know it's hard. I had to learn it, and if I could learn it, I was really negative. If I could learn it, you can. So just stick in there and don't give up. And look to Joseph as an example of how he never gave up. And when his purpose came and it was time, the Pharaoh had his dreams, and nobody of all his diviners and whatever he had could not interpret his dreams. Finally, the cupbearer that Joseph helped while they were in prison, he remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about him. And so that's what got Joseph out of prison, is the gift that God blessed him with. God used that to get him out and pretty much save the world. If it wasn't for the wisdom God blessed Joseph with, pretty much most people, I'm sure there would have been some strong survivors, or the rich ones like Pharaoh who would have survived, but most people would have died. But God used him to save everybody, including his own family, who the Lord had already promised to prosper them and make them grow so numerous, like they would be like the sands of the sea. You can't count them all, being his people Israel, right? So God is a God of his promises. He is not a liar. Whatever word he says will come to pass. You can look at the prophecies in Daniel and Jeremiah and Isaiah and Ezekiel, and especially Daniel. Daniel's a very intensely prophetic book of the Bible, and it's so related to the end times. And if you look at that and see what was prophesied back then over 2,000 years ago, and now they're coming to pass. A lot of them have come to pass already, and there's just a few more that still haven't come to pass yet, but they will. It's just a matter of time. And so look at that and remember that some of God's promises took 2,000 years, and he knows your life is nowhere near 2,000, so if he promised you something, it will come to pass in your lifetime. You specifically, right? If it's your vision, what he has for your life. And so you can hold on to those promises. Like the Jewish people, when they came out of Egypt after being slaves, and God did so much for them. He led them with a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day. He split the Red Sea so they can cross on dry land, and just as they crossed and Pharaoh's people were all up in there, and the sea came back together, and so Pharaoh and all his guys died, those two things alone would have blown my mind had I witnessed them myself. But then he not only did that, he rained manna from heaven because they were hungry. Even the plagues, he kept them safe from all the plagues that were throughout the rest of Egypt. They were safe from every one of them. And that alone would have kept me in awe. Or so I think, right? That's what I'd like to think. And that's what I used to think. And when I read about what happened, when the Jews wandered the desert for 40 years, and I thought, how could they doubt him after all they've seen, after all he's done and continues to do on their behalf? And they can just look out their tent and see the pillar of cloud or the pillar of fire and know that God is with them, and his very presence shows how much he loves them, but still they just chose to gripe and complain. And this wilderness journey was supposed to be like less than 2 weeks, I think, and it took them 40 years because they constantly griped and complained, and the Lord was merciful right up till they finally they went and saw the promised land, and they were scared because there were giants in it, and they thought, we can't take on giants. Instead of thinking, well, the Lord has brought us this far, and look at everything that he's done for us already, and how he destroyed Pharaoh and his armies, and he rained manna from heaven, and he leads us by a pillar of cloud and fire, and this and that, and you know, whatever, like how many countless things has the Lord done for them that they could have recalled and just been grateful and reminded themselves that he's been here with us the whole time, and he's not going to leave us now. I mean, he promised us this, so he's going to be there with us to fight. And even though we can't do it in our strength, we can't take on these giants in our strength, but the Lord is greater. You know, greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. But they refused to see that. They allowed fear to get the better of them, and they allowed negativity to rule their minds. And that is one of the reasons why, you know, the Bible tells us, take every thought into the captivity of the obedience of Jesus Christ. And we need to renew our minds, you know, because it's important. It's the battlefield of the mind. That's where Satan gets you. He plants his lies in you, in your mind, and you could choose to believe them, or you can be well-founded in the Word and in God's truth, because, you know, his Bible says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So when you know God's promises and you know his Word, then when Satan comes to help get you to focus on all the negative, you can flip it around and choose to focus on the positive. It's a choice. So I just hope this motivates you to flip every negative thought into the positive. When you catch yourself thinking negative thoughts, any type of negative thoughts, fear, lust, anger, frustration, impatience, you know, somebody cuts you off in the middle of the road and you just like want to slap them, you know, knock some sense into them or something, or whatever the case may be, because we still are flesh. We have moments of flesh, and we have thoughts that we would be ashamed of to admit. But, you know, just get them out there, confess them to God, and just say, okay, Lord, I admit, you know, I have all these bad thoughts. You know, I want to slap some people sometimes. I want to punch them in the throat, or whatever the case may be. Whatever is your truth, you can't deny it to God, because he knows your thoughts, and he knows your heart, and you can't hide it from him. But the changes won't come until you confess them to him, until you are totally honest with him, because what that means is you're being honest with yourself. By the time you can finally be honest with God, it's only because you're finally honest with yourself on who you really are, and you're finally ready to get rid of that. And I wanted to give you one more example of the kind of perception we should have during a trial, and how we should have a positive perception, right? One last thing about the Jewish people wandering the desert is, yeah, like how I thought, oh, if that was me, there's no way I doubt. Well, the Lord humbled me one day because I was thinking that, and for some reason he allowed me to think that for years. But, you know, it takes time to mature and to be able to be at a place where you can hear certain things and not just beat yourself up about it. So I finally got to a point where the Lord was able to reveal to me that I was no better. And he pointed out, you know, Priscilla, you gripe and complain a lot, and you can be pretty ungrateful. You know, you talk about how you're poor, but you've never really lacked. I mean, yeah, you've grown up on beans and rice, and sometimes you wanted a sandwich and all you had was a tortilla with mayonnaise and mustard, you know, and you had the kind of milk that you had to make, you know, it was the powdered milk from Wick, I think it was, and you had to add water, and it didn't really taste like milk, but you still did not lack. You still had something to eat. Even if it wasn't the best meal, it was sustenance, and I provided, and you had a roof over your head your entire life. You were never truly lacking anything. And I've been lucky enough to live in a place like the United States where, you know, we have government programs that help, and my mom had to take that help sometimes. And I go to Belize and they don't really have that government assistance. You know, we lived there and we saw people living in shacks, and like 6 people living in a one sort of bedroom, type shack. Sorry, that was my text messages. But yeah, one bedroom shack where the walls are barely being held up, you know, and a good wind would come and knock them over. Now that is poor. I've never been that poor, and still I'm just ungrateful, and so I had to be really humble. I just was like, wow, you're right, Lord, I'm really sorry, you know, forgive me, help me to be more grateful. I want you to know how grateful I am, and I want you to feel that I appreciate you. So help me to appreciate everything you do for me, from no matter how big or small it is. I want to recognize it for what it is, and that's a blessing from you. And I mean, I'm a work in progress. I still gripe and complain about a lot of things. I still have these thoughts where certain people mistreat me, and I just think, I didn't do anything to you for you treating me this way, and I deserve better than this. And then the Lord has to humble me again and remind me, the wages of sin is death. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So, what does that mean? Like, I deserve hell. I deserve much worse than what this person is giving me. But by the grace of God, I am saved, and I can look forward to heaven. So, forgive me, Lord, for my bad attitude, and for having a temporary lapse of memory of all my flaws, and help me to change and get rid of this ugly attitude. Because when I have this attitude, God's light isn't shining in me, and I'm supposed to be following Jesus' example. His light is supposed to shine through me. It's definitely not when I have that attitude. So forgive me, Lord, for potentially shaming your name, and help me instead to be a vessel of honor, to bring you honor and glory and praise, because that's what you deserve. It's not about me or what I deserve, but it's about what God deserves, and He deserves my very best. And so I have to remember to humble myself sometimes, because I can get prideful and think that I deserve better, you know, the way a lot of the Jews did. We were better off in Egypt. We should just go back to being slaves, and you know, we're just hungry out here. Where's our food? Where's our water? And I don't want to be like that. So I've prayed and asked God to help me, Lord, to be humble before you. Help me to learn quickly. You know, I don't want to ever prolong a trial. I don't mind going to the wilderness if that's where you want me to. I'll seek you in the wilderness, and I'll be there as long as you want me to. I just don't want my attitude to get annoying and to prolong it. So help me, especially we're in the end times, you know, and you're telling me more and more, you're telling me, redeem the time, because the end is here. Redeem the time. So help me, Lord, to redeem the time and not waste any of it. You know, I'm tired of wasting time, so just help me to redeem it. And one last thing, I'll leave it on a little more positive note, is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is another example the Lord gave me for this. And years ago, He revealed to me, He opened my eyes to see that even though they went through this crazy thing. I mean, this is when they were thrown in fiery furnace, right, for not bowing down to this idol that the king Nebuchadnezzar had made, and he commanded everybody to bow to it. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they refused to bow to any god but God. And so when they refused, they were offered one more chance, and they said they were won. You'll be thrown in the fiery furnace. And their response to the king was, well, our God will deliver us, but if He doesn't, we're not going to bow to your God anyway. Because they knew that, you know, one day they would see God, or they would spend eternity with Him. You know, I'd rather take fire for a few minutes than for an eternity. And that is what they chose. So, you know, they went into the fiery furnace, and it was so hot that the guys that threw them in got burnt up and died, but they didn't. As a matter of fact, when they looked in after they closed the door, they saw 4 men. Fourth one was God Himself, you know, Jesus, protecting them from the fire. And so that is God telling you, no matter what you go through, you could literally be in a fire, I will never leave you nor forsake you. No matter how scary it gets, know that I am there with you, going through it right alongside of you. I got your back, I got your sides, I got your front. I got you. And if you fall, I will pick you back up. If you are so weak you can't even walk anymore, I will carry you. Don't worry. Just trust in me, because I'm not a liar. I've proven myself to you throughout history, the history of your life. Just look back at everything that I've done for you. Why would I leave you now? Why would I put all this effort, all this love into you just to suddenly leave you now? I wouldn't do that. So that's what God's telling you today. Just look to him. Don't look at your situations the way the Jews did, wandered in the desert for 40 years. Don't focus on that. Be like Joseph and keep your eye on the goal that God's set for you, your purpose, your future. And be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and don't compromise your morals. Don't compromise your convictions, and hold fast to your trust in God and know that he will deliver you. And even if you die in the process, it doesn't matter, because that means you're going to go to heaven and be with God, and you're going to spend eternity with him, and that makes everything worth it. And if you read that story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you'll notice at the end when the king got them out, because he saw 4 men with them and he knew he only threw in 3, and they still came out with nothing wrong with them, even though the guys that threw them in burnt and died. And the king had no choice but to admit how awesome their God was, and he admitted in front of his kingdom, there is no God but the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He is the one true God. And it says that he promoted them. After they went through the fire, after they held back fast to their beliefs and went through the fire, they were promoted. So usually in your worst trials, just push through, because it's like God is saying he's getting ready to promote you. And you could look at Joseph as an example. He was in prison for years, but when he got out, he became second in command of all of the kingdom of Egypt. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were promoted after their time in the furnace. So just be encouraged today. Choose not to be negative, but choose to be positive. Choose to look to God. And one of the things that helped me was listening to Christian music all the time. So I used to listen to, I listened to just about everything, but when I started going through some crazy trials, I realized the way I was doing it wasn't cutting it, and I'm too negative, and I just knew I needed to do something different. And so I chose to listen to only positive Christian music, things that helped me really praise God, things that helped me remember that he had a plan for me, and that trials are only temporary, and that he is my strength, and he is always there for me, and he is so great and awesome and holy and beautiful, and just the things that reminded me of how awesome he was, and that I can make it. And so, if you need an extra push, then, and you're not just praising God every day, you're not listening to Christian music or worship music, whatever, just give it a try. I mean, God created music from the beginning of time for a reason. It is soothing to the soul. It could even have healing properties, So just give it a try and focus on God and his goodness instead of on what you don't have. And choose to be humble before the Lord and just praise him through the trials. And you will see such a huge difference in the way things go. I know I did, and that comes from somebody who was super, super negative. So I will be praying with you on this, because I know Satan really is roaming around like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour, because he knows his time is short, and he is fighting so hard. And that means we got to fight that much harder to stay with it and to bring God glory and to just stay positive. So I'll be praying for you, and I hope you pray for me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, whatever, because I know a lot of people are going through these things. I mean, the Lord is just sending me people that I'm having a text or call or whatever, just to pray with them about this kind of thing, because it's rampant. So just be blessed today, and know that God loves you, and he's always there for you. And I love you too, and I'll be praying for you guys. Alright? Love you. Bye.